Welcome to the advisory deck. Today we're having a conversation about membership organisations and collective enterprises. What place do they have in 2020? Why in a tight period, a tricky period when a lot of people are considering their investment in time and money in their memberships? Do they get value from them when they could be doing other things? Why are certain membership organisations going to survive? What drives their success? And what should you be looking for if you're making that consideration? We think this is perfect for membership organisations, peak bodies, associations, as well as leaders in organisations considering where they fit in their business. Hope you get some value from it. Hello, it's Troy Forrest and James McGill from... Start again.
So I do that, it's so enthusiastic.
Yeah, right, okay.
No, I like it.
Hey, it's Troy Forrest and James McGill. James, how are you?
I'm good, Troy, thank you.
Good, enthusiastic, we're upbeat,
so
up and about. I know, we are here, we've taken the advisory deck out on location once again and we're sitting under the MAB roof at Tonsley in the Flinders University, very fancy new age kind of space that we are. We're about to go in and have a conversation with the new Venture Institute, which is part of the Flinders University, and we brought the Strategy Road Swarm in, which is a group of professional service providers, consultants and advisors that we kind of bind together with as, for our day-to-day work. And we got us talking about membership-based organisations, and in 2020 in a business context, what's their role? Are they on the rise? Are they being challenged? What are the success drivers of them? Where are we seeing some do it well? And what can businesses kind of take out of this as well? So member-based organisations.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic in the sense that it's another business model. Right? We talk a lot about business models and the business model is purely being how you operate your business, how do you make money, how do you engage with customers. And member-based organisations, if we're thinking about them as different to a normal business, they don't necessarily have to be. So if you think of member-based, someone's paying you to deliver a service of some sort, and there's every state and every country has its member-based organisations. There's groups like the Leaders Institute, Members, Business SA, various councils and industry organisations, and they can add a lot of value, and they can be really, really helpful. But often you see in a tougher economic time, perhaps like we are having now, it's also because they're external to your organisation. They don't sit in your business. It's not your own HR person or your marketing person or your finance person. It's an external cost, and it makes it really, really easy to turn that off if you're looking to save some money. And so there's a real challenge for member-based organisations to demonstrate their value to their clients on an ongoing basis, because they don't have that in-house kind of relationship. And that's what we've been thinking about and talking to groups about in the last, I guess, a few weeks really. And the Swarm is the same sort of collaboration group. How do you build a business model when you're not inside an organisation, when you're called on for specific reasons and purposes? How do you make that such a strong relationship that people think, well, that $100 or $1,000 or $5 or $10 or $20,000 a year is worth holding on to, and that's what we're going to explore.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting and challenging time for member-based organisations, and there is an irony here, right? That the time that maybe most, leaders and teams need to be part of it,
need something,
and draw on the collective of an organisation, is the time that they might be challenged cost-wise, time-wise, focus-wise. We have 24 hours in a day. We've got a lot of different priorities. We've got our own organisation's priorities. Can I be bothered? Is it beyond me?
Yeah, you can imagine right now, if you've got a CEO, and maybe a CFO or financial controller, or husband and wife running a family business, whatever it might be, and you're going through your list of costs and saying, where do we cut some money so we can afford to hang on to a staff member or do something else? Oh, this member-based group, we pay them $3,000 a year. Do we need them now? Don't know. Go on. We can join later on. I think it's a really tough position to be in.
I haven't had time to go to any of their meetings in the last 6 months because we've been so flat stick.
Can't physically get there.
Trying to grow our own business. We can't physically get there. It's across borders. You know what? We'll come back to this at another time. And again, the member organisation quite often sits there and go, but this is why we're here. This is why we exist, to help you, support you, connect you, facilitate, all of these things that we know you're not going to do for yourself in a tricky time. And so, what is it that those who are successful at holding on and retaining and continuing to deliver or even amp up the value that they give to their members doing in this period when so many will be looking at their time budgets, dollar budgets, and going, well, maybe a little bit later. So examples of those that we're sort of doing it well. I mean, I do a lot of work with the AgLink organisation, which is a terrific member-based network organisation, a collection of members around Australia and now around the world, US, Canada and Brazil, who decided as independent businesses, we're going to stick together, have friends in the industry, to come together for sharing of resources, sharing of knowledge, sharing of best practice, collective bargaining when we need to, a scale and a collective might against larger enterprises, but preserving the flexibility of our own independent business models.
So what's AgLink? Have they needed to do anything differently in the last few months? And their organisation, it's agricultural, right? And I think that's driven primarily by seasons. You get a good season, people are making money, they can afford to do various things. It's not so much a member-based organisation that's trying to provide HR support or something else. Have they changed their business model in the last 6 months through COVID, or have they been able to keep doing what they're doing because it's driven by different success factors?
I think beyond travel restrictions, of course, we're talking about, regional cross-border communities. A lot of the AgLink member businesses networks within the member businesses straddle borders, and so there's some interesting challenges going on there, but it's agriculture. It started raining in Australia, thankfully, so there's some positivity going on there. In terms of whether they changed their business model, no, but the focus of the support and the conversations that they had, I think agriculture is a really interesting case study. It probably is a little different than a lot of other industry sectors because they're used to working through protracted difficult periods, through drought and other challenges as well, so they know how to hold the line longer than, I'll stick this out, this too shall
play
pass.
The long game.
Yeah, so they're maybe a little better at it. That said, a lot of stress through drought, particularly over the past few years, and now COVID to add to it. Wonderful communication. Hey, let's still have virtual gatherings. Let's share intelligence. Let's share best practice ideas. Let's also just feel that, and I don't want to underplay the importance of this, that sense of kinship, that sense of there are others. We're not going through this alone. There are others I can pick up the phone, just debrief to as well. And there is real value in that too. So the model not so much changed, but in terms of how they've been going about interacting, certainly strong support, lots of L&D support as well.
So I think that's the key, again, business models is figuring out who your clientele are. We're talking about member-based groups. Someone like AgLink have 20 members? What's their 18 members? So they're quite tight, and they're almost more of a cooperative in a way, in the sense that they banded together for a common purpose, give them some common benefits, share some costs, maybe build a larger brand over their own brands, which is probably quite different to a member-based organisation that's, say, a state-based industry group that's you pay a fee for, and they'll help you with some HR, some training and development, where you might be one of 1,000 or one of 2,000 or 3,000 people. That business model is quite different. So again, I think if we're talking about business models, you've really got to understand what your purpose is, in this case as a member-based group, and how do you build your model based on that?
Yes.
So you can't take a model and say, oh, someone else was doing that, we should try and do the same thing, or we'll copy what they're doing. If they've got different targets, different long-term objectives as opposed to short-term, you could make a tremendous mistake by deploying the wrong strategy in that decision process.
Yeah, and look, if you think about, say, the difference between a group like that, friends within the industry who decide to pool resources to create some collective might versus an industry representative body, a winemaker and grape growers association or business SA or a chamber of commerce, if you like, where what drives success and value for members in those organisations? Well, strong advocacy, strong leadership, a unified voice on matters to lobby for certain things, as well as some of those networking type benefits as well. So different value proposition, and I'm looking for different things from them.
And the challenge then as well, having been through this and you're sitting in corporate and you're paying a fee to someone, is when the CFO, the financial controller, the decision maker goes through cost process, if they're not the one who's been getting the benefit, they're not one who has the relationship with the provider, it's very easy to say that's not relevant to me. We can avoid that $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 cost. Because they don't have that relationship and understanding. I think there's a really key there as well for within the member-based organisation, is making sure that you understand who's making the decisions about your success with that organisation and being really close and tight to them. Because when times get tough, and every industry, every sector goes through cycles, you want to be someone who's seen as really, really important as opposed to optional. So whether it's COVID, whether it's drought, whether it's something else. In member-based organisations, it's different to other organisations in terms of that business model. Don't lose sight of who makes the decision, but who gets the check. Because if you don't have that relationship, you're on the increased chance of being on the outer.
I guess there's the third piece too, which is if you think about sporting clubs, service groups, groups where people come together for something bigger than a 1 year annual benefit or a package of annual benefits. There's a belief in the legacy that this involvement will create. If you think of your sporting club, you'll endure years of pain and no success. As a Carlton supporter, I'm very used to this, and yet the football club maintains its membership. Translate that out to small regional community sporting clubs and people who say, it doesn't matter if we don't win a grand final for 50 years, I'm still going to pay my annual membership or be part of a service group as well. So I think, again, there is that sense of, well, maybe it's not, I'm not here for the leadership of this. Maybe I'm not even here for the collective scale benefits that this membership could give me. Maybe I just believe in something bigger. So something like the future of the industry, the future health of the industry. I do some work with the Great Wine Capitals Global Network. Why are member countries part of that? Well, they want to be part of the Great Wine Capitals, which gives them some sort of branding piece as well, but they believe in nurturing the future long-term health of the global wine sector as well. And so if on a year-by-year basis I don't get those sort of tiny upsides, that's okay. There is a longer game at play here. So I think time horizons come into this conversation, right?
Agreed.
Okay, we might throw over to a couple of folk that know a little bit about this, who are involved in these, driving them successfully, and might have some observations about, why you would choose a member organisation, what drives their success, and some traps for young players as well.
One of the most important things for us, and for myself in particular and the staff within our group, is to maintain a regular dialogue with our members. So it's communicating with them effectively and in the most appropriate time that fits in with their schedules on a day-to-day basis, and understand the things that they're going through and tailoring our services and our messaging to them specifically, because each member has different issues. Australia's a big geography. They all are challenged in different ways. So we need to understand those things. So understanding the need and then delivering and tailoring our services accordingly to them within the framework that we operate within. I think the other thing too is that, we're very clear on our strategy. We've got 5 key strategic priorities, and our members are one of those. Our role is to facilitate activities with them, whether that be meetings such as our commercial meetings where we bring our suppliers in, making sure that our suppliers understand what our members' needs are, delivering to those needs and being relevant to them at that moment in time. The other thing too, which I think we do a fairly reasonable job of, is assisting with our members with activities that they can't do themselves very effectively. So they're running a business, they're engaged on a day-to-day basis, focusing on their customers. There are things that we can do that, because we like to think that we're joined at the hip with them, where we can actually do those little 1%ers, 2%ers, where we can add value to them in other ways that they otherwise would not do themselves. And a good example of that would be our Skills Academy, or the Academy as we call it, where we can actually help train their people, their staff, their customers with things or about things that they, as I said, they wouldn't otherwise have the capability of doing because they're too busy. They don't have the size to run a facility like a webinar, for instance. We can do that for them and make their life easier. So it's those small things that allow us to assist our members in an effective way. So, and I guess the other thing too is that we need to understand what value we're providing to them on a regular basis. So checking in with ourselves. Okay, are we providing value? So whatever we do for our members, is it actually adding value, or is it adding noise to their business? So we measure our value in terms of some of the financial things and the attributes that we bring to their business. We measure those. We also try and measure the non-financial things too, and communicate those to our members and make sure that resonates with them, because it's really important that whatever we do, we are actually making a difference in their business and not just, as I said, creating noise for them.
So Troy, it seems to me that the basics of member-based organisation starts with the family. And I would have thought that we are all a part of, or most of us are part of, a family-based member organisation. That often extends to a family-based business organisation. And so that extension of the family through the business realm leads to another expansion of that. Of course, this all comes from clans, tribes. The origins of this membership concept go back a long, long time. You touched on cooperatives. They are a member-based organisation for a common purpose, as are sporting clubs. With sporting clubs, you might be a supporter or a fan. You may be an active member, and that will lead you to have an activity base that engages with other members, and from that, other social things expand. The commonality of the membership leads to great strength. And so looking down the line and over time, we've all gained strength that begins in family and association, common purpose, and sometimes rather more formally joining together. Trade associations are very similar. There's a common purpose, the good for all across a certain set of skills. So I suspect there's a whole lot more member-based organisations around than we might at first think. One of the secrets is knowing your members well, knowing the nuances of the members and what's brought them into the association. That's very important, because in these challenging times, if you don't know what they want, you won't know how to lead. Leadership has never been more important.
Terrific insights. Thank you so much for those. James, as we wrap up this conversation about member organisations, collectives, the idea as a leader and a board that I'm sitting down now and saying, should we pay our fee? Should we try and invest the time and money in a member organisation in a tricky period in history when we're distracted, when we have to tighten our belt a little bit as well? What kind of comes to mind as a take home for the decision makers in the business around making that assessment?
The value for money proposition is at the heart of so many decisions, and I think that's whether you're the one providing the service or receiving it. It's being clear about how do you perceive value for money, and that perception is best addressed by having regular conversations with your clients or with your provider to say, here's what's going on. And I think not enough people, especially providers, have a regular conversation about here's what we're offering you for this amount of money. Do you perceive value in that, and how do we make sure you're happy with it? Yes. And that's, I guess you'd almost call that account management. So I think on both sides of the fence, having those regular, open, honest conversations about a model that says we're paying you on a subscription basis normally. Are you happy with that? And it gets harder to do that at scale, but if you don't do it at scale or in a one-to-one relationship, when the tough times come, you'll more likely see a large drop-off in your relationships because people don't perceive the value. So I think that's the takeaway for me.
My observation would be that there are membership organisations that do pretty well on a transactional basis. On a year-by-year basis, I'll offer X amount of benefits to our paid-up members, and if they walk away at the end of the day saying, I got what I paid for, terrific, I'll go again next year, they're at real risk in these kind of periods. But it's those membership organisations where there is a common set of values, a common belief system, that there's a longer-term game to be played here. I sat in on a webinar last night, I was telling you earlier, with cray fishermen in the southeast of South Australia, from where I'm from, who decided to form a cooperative because some of the big guys, the little independent guys, were being squeezed out of the market by the big guys. Came together, banded together, said, let's form this, be members, and let's create this thing for ourselves, not just because it keeps us in business, but because we believe in nurturing a long-term industry in our part of the world. And I think if that long-term mindset is part of your core belief and you share that with the member organisation, it's probably thinking really hard about whether you can ride some of the lumps and bumps in the short term, because the long-term game still remains important to you.
Really good points, and I think at the moment especially, it's such a strong push in Australia for buy local, local supply chains, getting back to a more natural food and agricultural kind of setting. That if you're in those industries, whether it's dairy or fish or meats or whatever it might be, that cooperative kind of model, I think, has renewed value, whereas 10 years ago it was all corporate. And I think the pendulum has swung back. So it'd be interesting in the next few months and year or two to see how many more groups like that come together to try and change the perception of what they do and what they can bring in that value equation to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go and hang out now with our little cooperative group, the Swarm, which is probably worth an episode of the advisory deck at some point down the track all by itself. But we hope this has been a valuable conversation to you as a leader considering your memberships and maybe even considering forming your own collective enterprises during a really interesting period. If you'd like us to come and riff and have a conversation and try and add some value to your thinking, maybe you have a membership organisation, an industry peak body, an association, we'd love to come and try and add some value. We'll bring the deck to you, or hey, come out to Tonsley with us. The sun's shining, don't know how long that'll last. James, thank you for your contributions.
Always good.
As always, there's ping pong balls going in the background here as well. It's a Google type campus.
Someone roller skating over there as well. It's all happening.
Roller skating, autonomous vehicles, very cool. Okay, have a great day and thanks for being on the advisory deck.